baby recently. And after a while of walking around and singing and making faces, I noticed in her head movements and in her little grumpy little body motions that motion that my own babies used to make when they needed to go to sleep, but they weren't getting there on their own. They were ready, they were exhausted, but all the things that are going on were just too much, and they weren't able to just let go of that. And she was doing the same sort of a grumbling around, kind of drifting, and so I found that even though it's been 9 years, my legs still kind of remember that jounce, and my arms kind of remember that you're supposed to pat a bum, and suddenly all the shushing and all of the things that you do to help a little one get to sleep when they can't get there on their own just kind of came back. And with it, sort of this relentless singing, at least with ours. I don't know if they remember, but they heard an awful lot of "He's got the whole world in his hands," because you can just keep making up verses. And sometimes all you could do was this sort of singing, swinging, dancing, and this relentless singing. But as I handed her off to her dad, still with that little bit of bounce that I couldn't quite give away, I remembered once when I had an entirely different experience. When they get a little bit too old for the singing and the dancing and the bum patting because they're large, I had a 2-year-old that I was trying to convince needed to sleep on vacation in the bottom of a bunk bed in a strange place. And Grandma and Grandpa were around to watch this spectacular failure. It was really impressive. She was too old for all of the dancing and the shushing, and I did not have the patience for 300 verses of relentless singing. I should have just crawled in bed right alongside, but I was too mad. You cannot, it turns out, by being stern, put a 2-year-old to sleep. You cannot scold a toddler into sleeping. If you are especially forceful, you can use that glare to get the kid back into the bed, but that's where it stops. No amount of parental authority can actually compel a child to be quiet and allow everyone else in the apartment to sleep. You can't force sleep on someone else. So we heard in our first reading about God, our Father, the creator of all that is seen and unseen. Now that is parental authority, right? The very definition of cosmic power. And tonight, when we hear the story of the shepherds, when the heavens are shredded by the light of the host of heavens, remember when you hear that these are not sweet little cherubs with the little wings and the extra rolls. These are the legions of the Almighty delivering this message. And the glory of the Lord shines off of them, even here so far from heaven. You have to figure that they're dialing it back as much as they can. But if one was terrifying, and that's what we'll hear, one is terrifying, what must the light of a multitude be? To be honest, when we are walking in the darkness and we are praying for God's great light, we might not really be wanting to ask for quite so much. In the real light of things, we are more like deer in the headlights than anything relative to the shining of the divine. And so God's prophet says, look, the rod of the oppressor, all the boots of all the tramping warriors, all the garments rolled in blood, enough. Enough, the prophet says. God is done with that. God can see how we suffer. God can see how we hurt one another. God can see that what we need and what we are actually doing are completely different, right? Now, my anger cannot force a toddler to sleep, but the glory of the Lord could absolutely blind us, could take away our freedom, could shine us into submission. But we come tonight to hear the story that says God is different, that God chooses not to smite us into peace and justice, but that God never fails to bring the light that God has promised. It's not going to come up. There we go. It's not a big light. While we are busy smiting each other, or busy promising one another that God is going to get you when God comes, the light does come. The light comes, and God is different. God does what I did not have the patience to do for my child. God crawls right in with us. It seems so tiny, such a small thing, this little baby, that God, the blinding and terrifying light, would come into the middle of it all in the frailty of a human body. That God would come with the innocence of an infant so that the powers of the night don't even suspect what has come underneath their very noses. That God would come with a vulnerability that relies on new parents who don't necessarily know what they're doing and haven't even learned that dance yet. That God would come as this child who grows, who will do for us what we cannot do for ourselves. Who will create in his living and in his dying and in his resurrection the peace we can't find. Who will, with his gentle hands, offer the healing and the forgiveness and the restoration we refuse one another again and again. Who will, in his own body, allow the empire and sin and death to do their very worst, so that when the light returns, we will know that they cannot overcome it. The light we are waiting for comes tonight, and it comes with singing instead of smiting. The soft, relentless singing of a mother's tired voice, helping us, overwhelmed and restless, find that hope and that peace that we just cannot make for ourselves. Ran across this poem as I was thinking this week, and it has been sitting with me for a number of days. It's by Quinn Calder, and it says, "Come, loneliness, come and we will sing to you of Emmanuel, God with us. Come, death, for hark, the herald angels sing that Christ is risen with healing in his wings. Come, depression, and we will sing Gloria in excelsis Deo, and we will hold that long O until you are no more. Come, power, and we will sing to you that the first Noel was to poor shepherds. Come, despair, and we will sing joy into your world. Come, racism, come, homophobia, come, sexism, abuse, for tonight is your silent night. Come, war, and we will sing you to sleep. We know the song. We learned it from him. Come, all ye faithful, and sing.